Hey, good morning. What we're going to do today, we're going to make some sweet and spicy bread and butter pickles. Went down to the garden this morning and the cucumbers are coming on 3, 4, 5 a day, and so is the zucchini and the squash. So it's about time for us to start pickling. We've already taken beans and blanched them and froze them and bagged them. But today we're going to make some pickles. You can take the same recipe and substitute cucumbers out for yellow squash or zucchini. I know my family actually kind of likes the yellow squash and the zucchini pickled as much, if not better, than they do the cucumbers. Okay, so we've moved over here a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cucumbers. You want about 2 pounds of cucumbers. I'm going to do a double recipe. So with that being said, I've got about 8 cucumbers here, and my normal recipe calls for 2 pounds. I'm going to do 2 pounds, so I'm going to do 4 pounds, and it calls for about a half a pound of thinly sliced onions. I'm going to put about a pound of thinly sliced onions in there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to slice the vegetables in about 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to take them, I'm going to put in a colander. I'm going to put kosher salt on them. Then I'm going to put ice cubes on top of them, and I'm going to put them in the refrigerator for about 2 to 3 hours. The reason you do that is the kosher salt draws out the moisture, which will give you a nice crisp crunch on the onion and on the cucumbers. So that's what we're going to do. I think we'll film it here a little bit. We'll just cut up some cucumbers and cut up some onions. Then we'll add our kosher salt and our ice cubes and go about our business. Some of you may have a scale, some of you may not. I have a scale from my old food service days. Comes in pretty handy. We've already washed all the cucumbers, so I'm just going to trim the ends off of them. Now, you could take and use a mandolin. I have a mandolin for this. Matter of fact, I might do that here in a minute. I think I'll go ahead and just trim the ends off of all of these, and then I'll grab the mandolin out of the drawer and we'll do that. That way we get some nice even cuts. Depends on how good you are with a knife to make every one of them equally the same, but like I said, I like to use a mandolin. Prep this stuff. Oops. Have our onion ready. The other thing about it too, if you use a mandolin to slice your onions, you won't end up crying all over the place. I don't know about you, but every time I cut or dice onions, boy, I can't help but tearing. I've tried everything they say, but nothing ever seems to work for me. So that's about all we need to do for now with this. And boy, the onions don't fall off too easy. Okay, so I'm going to set those over there. I think I'll take this stuff and just put it in the sink for now. We'll get rid of that later. I'm gonna grab the mandolin out of the drawer. I don't know, if you're accustomed to using a mandolin or not. Like I say, you can always use a knife. You're wanting to cut them about 1/8 of an inch thick. But in using, this mandolin, it makes them all pretty consistent. But you do need to be extremely careful. This has got a guard to it, which I always make sure after we use it, wash it, let it sit on the counter dry, and get that guard back on there. Because this thing is pretty darn sharp. I'm thinking that's about right. Let's take a test here. Yeah, it looks pretty good, about 1/8, so that should work for us. As it gets shorter, there's actually a guard, which we will be using. Don't know if you've seen these or not. Pretty simple. Stick the product on there, and I always do this wrong, so I want to make sure I got it going the right way. If not, end up cutting the teeth off of it. So what I'm thinking is we're gonna cut up a couple more here, and then I'll take a break and I'll come back to you after I've cut all of them. I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch me cut up all of these. So let's do an onion real quick. I want to make sure you see how this works. And I go through and look, and if there's some little pieces I want to take out, I take out. But for the most part, we're doing pickles, so they don't have to be perfect. If I've got any that are really too little like that, a lot of times I just eat them because they're good. But let me do an onion, and then we'll break, and I'll finish them up, and then we'll come back. So on an onion, I'm doing really the same thing. A lot of times on the onion, I'll start it on here. Oop. Get this thing on. See how much easier that is to get those onions sliced nice and even. So mandolin works great. They're fairly inexpensive. I think I bought this at like Bed Bath & Beyond for maybe $20, $25, but it works beautiful. So I'm going to take a quick little pause here. I'll cut up the rest of these, and then I'll come back and show you how to add the kosher salt and how to add the ice cubes. Okay, as we talked about, went ahead and cut all of the cucumbers and cut the onions all up, kind of mixed them a little bit together. Some people have big bowls, big containers, big colanders. I know when I used to be in the restaurant business, we had, gigantic wash tub colanders. Here at home, not so much. So we're going to improvise a little bit this morning, but what I've got is 4 pounds of cucumbers and 1 medium onion, and I'm going to take 4 heaping tablespoons of kosher salt, and what this is going to do, like I say, it's going to pull some of the moisture out of it. You don't have to do this, but I do, because I like crisp, crunchy cucumbers and crisp, crunchy onions when I'm doing the pickles. If you don't do this, excuse me, what you'll end up with is a bunch of soft, limp pickles. It draws the moisture out. So I just try to give it a good mix, get it coated with the kosher salt. And I'll come back and check it maybe an hour or so, but it'll stay in the fridge for about 3 hours. And I may give it a stir again in another hour, hour and a half. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it, I'm going to pour it into a colander, or I've got a steamer pot, serves the same purpose, and I'm going to take, it's a little bigger than the colander that I have, so I'll put my pickles and my onions and my kosher salt in here. Kind of even it out a little bit. And I'm going to take about 4 cups of ice and I'm going to put on top of that. And what will happen over the next few hours is that water, or that ice, melts. It'll go through the cucumbers and the onions, and it'll drain the salt, and the salt will pull the moisture out of the cucumbers and the onions. So we'll be back in about 4 hours, and when we come back, I'll show you the recipe that you put together to make the brine for the pickles. Okay, we're back. What I want to do is just go over with you the ingredients that I put in a pot already and started cooking. Figured you didn't want to wait 20 minutes for me to get it boiling. So what I did was I put 6 cups of cider vinegar, 4.5 cups of sugar, white sugar, 2 teaspoons of whole mustard seed, 1.5 teaspoons of celery seed, 1.5 teaspoons of whole black pepper, 1/2 of a teaspoon of turmeric, and I put 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper. You can put a little more than that, just depends on how spicy you want it. 1/4 to basically to a half, I guess. And then you bring that to a boil, and what we're going to do, we're going to take the cucumbers and onions, drop it in, bring it back to a boil, and as soon as it comes back to a boil, then I'm going to have my jars already ready. The jars I've sterilized, I've put them in the hot boiling water for the last 10 minutes. I'll take them out just before we start ladling it while the water's coming back to a boil. So we'll film that real quick. It should be a fairly easy thing to do. And then you want to fill the jars with about a 1/2 inch from the top of the jar, the shoulder. Screw your lids back on, clean the lid first, put your lids back on, put them in your boiling water, cover them with about 1 inch of water, and boil them for about 10 minutes. A good steady boil with the water. And then you take them out, set them on the side, kind of give a little press down in the middle of the jar so you make sure that it's sealed, and let them cool. And then in about an hour and a half, you will know if they're all sealed, and you can put your stuff away. If any of them, if the seal doesn't seal well on the jar, the canning jar, you can always take them, put them in the refrigerator. They're good for 3 or 4 weeks in the refrigerator. But we're eating right now pickles that we canned over a year ago, about this time last year, I guess. So, but anyhow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to put the cucumbers and the onions in the pot of the mixture that we've already worked out for you. I just gave you the ingredients, and when it comes to a boil, we'll put them in a jar. So here are the cucumbers that we had in the refrigerator. I'm going to go ahead and get these ice cubes out of here. And it doesn't matter if you get every one of them, but I get the most of them. That way I'm not bringing down the temperature of my water again. So. Okay, so we've got most of that out. So now that we've got most of the ice out of there, what we want to do, we want to rinse this. As you can see, I put a plate in the bottom of this bowl, which lifted the pot up a little bit, but I'll show you here how much I'm pouring out. That much liquid came out of those cucumbers and onions that the salt drawed out. So it was quite a bit. Now what we want to do is we want to just really give them a good rinse. And while we're doing that, of course, is to get most of that kosher salt out of there that we put in. So, try to give it a shake. Here. Rinse. Boy, they really smell good. You smell the onion and the fresh cucumber. I'm going to pour them back in this to strain them. Give them another quick rinse. While that's draining a little bit, I'm going to reach over here and take my jars out of the pot. I've had them sterilizing for the last 15 minutes, I guess. Is the light good enough in here, you think? Do we need to make any changes? There we go. Probably need a little more light on the subject. Excuse me. What we're going to do is get these jars out, and like I said, I've had them in here for about 10 minutes. Turn that down. Had them in here for about 10-15 minutes, sterilizing boiling water. You can take them out with a pair of tongs, but these jar grabbers really make things a lot easier. But you really do need to make sure that you've got your lids sterilized and your jars sterilized. If not, you could end up with some bacteria and end up causing a failed seal. You have to be careful though. This recipe should make probably a little over 3 quarts. I'm using these, or 3 pints. I'm using these half jars, so we'll end up kind of guessing to see where we come out. But to get these lids out of here, two things and fish them out with your tongs. This is always kind of a process. Nice thing about this basket or this canning pot is it does have that basket in there, so once we put our jars in, it'll be easy to lift the jars out. Once they're seated, you won't have to do them one at a time. And you can also, you know, reuse your jars every year. The only thing you need to do is, you know, you need to sanitize them and get new lids. The screw-on part of the lid is fine, but the center part, you want to get a new part. And they always say sanitize them by manufacturer's instruction, but the bad thing is there's no manufacturer instructions on the box. I've read every one out there. There's no instruction I can't find. So I just boil them right along with my jar. So now that we've got our jars there, we've got our cucumbers drained. We're going to put these in the pot. I'm trying to figure out how to stand so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to get them in this pot. And bring it back to a boil, which will probably take about 7 or 8 minutes. So we may take a little break here and come back to you once it's come to a boil. Hi guys, we're back. One of the things I want to do is I want to make some hot some of these pickles a little bit hotter than others. So I've got banana peppers here, which we took out of the garden. I'm just going to cut the ends off of it. I'm going to split it down the middle. I'm going to take the seeds out of it so it's not quite as spicy. And they're going to cook for another 10 minutes in there, and then they're in the brine as well. So I'm going to take and throw one banana pepper in each jar. I'm just going to split them in half, like I said. I'm going to take the seeds out, throw them in the jar, and then I'll put the pickles, the hot pickles in there, and we'll cook them for 10 minutes. The other thing that I want to try is I want to try something a little bit different. Last year we did some with orange, and we did some with peach. This year, grandkids love pineapple. I'm going to put a couple of 3 pieces of pineapple in each one of these jars. It's really good. And see if we can get a little pineapple to our bread and butter pickles. So we'll just bring this back over here. What I'm doing, I got it really close to the stove. It's super hot. I'm going to try to ladle this right into the jar. I'll turn my fire off. You're going to put your pickles in. Leave them all maybe a ½ inch from the top. Sometimes a little difficult to judge how many you got in there. But maybe I can show you here. As you can see, we're about a ½ inch from the top. almost tried to pick that jar up. You do not want to pick that jar up with your bare hands. So you get your lid on, kind of snug it down. Don't want it, you know, you don't want to manhandle it on there, but get it good and snug. Then we're going to take our jar, we're going to set it back in this pot. Turn it on high. We're going to do our next one. This one has got our pineapple in it. Same scenario. I tend to try to fill it up with the pickles and onions and then come back and put a little more broth in it. That way I don't end up with a jar full of broth. Just a touch more. I think I might be able to squeeze one or two more pickles in that jar. There we go. Same scenario, take your lids, and all of these lids and tops I boiled, so they're all still kind of nice and warm too. Snug. And in the water bath it goes. Like I say, you want to bring these to a boil for about 10 minutes, the jars that you're canning, to make sure you finish processing and cooking them, and also to seal the jars. We're going to do this one here that we've put the banana peppers in, and I think we will go ahead and do the rest of these, and then we'll come back as we're taking them out to show you what that looks like. Oh, we're back. One thing I did want to make sure that everybody understands is when you do these jars, the lids has a small indentation right in the middle of the lid, and once you've cooked the product, it's sealed, that lid will go in and stay in. I help it a lot of times after I pull them out. I'll leave them for a few minutes and I'll push it. If you don't, it'll pull itself down. But when you know that your seal didn't work is when this little lid has a small indentation. It's probably impossible to see it on this, but what it does is the pressure from within kind of bubbles that little indentation up. But when it's sealed, the indentation is going down because the inside, the vacuum, has pulled the air out of it. So it's hard to see here, but look at a mason jar. You can hear the clicking because at this point it's neutral. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take our jars out. We're ready now, and then we'll just leave them set and cool. If you enjoyed the video and if it's helpful, share it with your friends, and please subscribe, because we're going to have a lot of new things coming over the next few weeks. Let me show you how I get them out of here real quick. Like I said, if you have any questions on the recipe or anything, feel free to text me, email me back, Facebook me, and I'll be glad to answer you back. But I did, you know, basically a double batch this morning. I'm hoping that those pineapple ones turn out really good. because I'm getting ready to go pick the grandkids up from school. We'll put them in the refrigerator for a little bit, and I'm sure they'll enjoy them. There again, thank you for watching, and like I said, share and subscribe. Have a great day.